Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, at the very onset of my remarks, allow me to congratulate His Majesty King Mohammed VI and the people of Morocco on the occasion of the 15th Throne Day celebrations. I would like to wholeheartedly thank my brother Mohammed bin Isa for his generous hospitality. I'm truly honored to join him in his hometown and to be a part of such a distinguished crowd. Nearly 4 decades ago, Dr. bin Isa and his long-term friend, Mohamed Melahi, one of Morocco's most prominent artists, started the Assilah Forum. Their aim was to establish a, quote, stronghold for the protection of man's dignity and the values of his civilization, a common ground where Arab Muslim intellectual can meet his counterparts from the other world. Well, it has since grown into a global forum for leading opinion makers to come together and exchange views on critical issues facing the international community. I'm particularly humbled by the fact that this year's event is organized in collaboration with my Center for International Relations and Sustainable Development, an international public policy think tank based in Belgrade and New York, which I founded upon completion of my term as President of the UN General Assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, the world is becoming increasingly smaller, denser, more complex, and interconnected. Ours is an era of intensifying global trade, global financial flows, global movements of peoples, global communication. Much of it is driven by a force that is both irresistible and irreversible, and that is technology. This is one of the most fundamental causes of our interdependence. What makes us politically, economically, socially, and culturally more bound to one another than ever before. No matter where we reside or how we make our living, our future is being shaped by events and decisions made across the planet, just as much as those made across the street. However, this has been accompanied in many quarters by a sense that globalization is making us feel less secure. Tensions, misunderstandings, and misperceptions are clearly on the rise. The gap between the haves and have-nots keeps widening. And the physical degradation of our planet continues unabated. Ladies and gentlemen, this is, in my opinion, one of the great paradoxes of globalization. Growing interdependence and growing insecurity. The Gaza war, preceded by the total breakdown of the peace process, is but the latest crisis. Others include the ongoing tragedy in Syria, which shows no sign of relenting, and the dramatic situation in the Fertile Crescent. Both have acutely inflamed long-standing frictions between Sunni and Shia throughout the Middle East. The deepening fragmentation of Libya has exacerbated a series of low-intensity conflicts throughout the Sahel drylands, extending out to the Horn of Africa. Despite several interventions, parts of the region remain safe havens for separatist insurgents, terrorists, and pirates. This has further destabilized the belt of countries from the Atlantic down to the Gulf of Aden, many of which are classified by the UN as the least developed. The situation in Asia is also a cause of concern, despite its very strong economic performance. The absence of an inclusive form of regional security is a mounting challenge. And so is the increasingly bellicose rhetoric, the escalation of existing territorial conflicts, and the significant buildup of national military capabilities. Relations between Russia and the West are in a downward spiral. Both appear to be digging in their heels for a protracted struggle with potentially far-reaching consequences for international peace and stability. The perceived opacity of the underlying intentions of one by the other has contributed to the creating of an atmosphere strikingly reminiscent of the Cold War. There is a real danger, in my opinion, that we might end up in a position of being stuck between the scylla of dysfunctional multipolarity and the Charybdis of what a good friend of mine, Ian Bremmer, has called a G0 world, a leaderless global environment. The international system, as we know, may be nearing its breaking point, and it could not have come at a worse time. And here is why, ladies and gentlemen, we now have less than 17 months, roughly 500 days left before two critical multilateral events are scheduled to convene. Both will take place in December 2015, and both will be conducted under the auspices of the United Nations. The first is the launch of the UN post-2015 agenda, which is a three-pronged process that requires the adoption of a set of ambitious and universal sustainable development goals, putting in place options to finance them, and creating an enforceable mechanism to monitor their implementation. The second is COP21, a landmark climate change conference that is supposed to produce a comprehensive, legally binding agreement to keep global warming below 2 degrees Celsius. The outcomes of these two summits will largely determine whether humanity has the will to profoundly change how it conceives and executes its economic, social, and environmental affairs, and whether the conditions in nature prerequisite for continued human progress will be conserved or will soon disappear. Ladies and gentlemen, our room for maneuver is narrowing, for we are fast approaching the planetary point of no return. I believe that we shall have to forsake our discordant business as usual approach and instead embrace a new form of cooperation, beset by a series of competent, concurrent, aspirational, and bold measures, coordinated at the highest level by leaders who understand the imperative of putting sustainable development at the heart of conduct of international relations in the 21st century. In my opinion, this is the only way to meet the 2015 deadline. No one should underestimate the difficulty of this task. I fervently hope, however, that over the next 500 days, by working in concert at the UN, we can finish building the institutional foundation for the universal transition to sustainability. Inshallah, the post-2015 agenda will be successfully launched and an ambitious climate treaty agreed. So the essential first step in the creation of a new global compact will have been completed. It would be naive, however, to believe this would extinguish geopolitical rivalries, or that the UN would suddenly become a multilateral panacea for solving the world's problems. Yet, a shared commitment to sustainable development could help bridge the deep and growing fissures in the international system. States that are today in competition with each other would have a new, compelling reason to work together and achieving outcomes that benefit the international community as a whole. But ladies and gentlemen, for this to be possible, I believe the United Nations will need to be profoundly revitalized. Otherwise, the sole multilateral organization of indisputable and universal legitimacy will continue to devolve into a high-priced forum for invective, little more than a sophisticated debating society for professional diplomats. The agreed terms of the post-2015 agenda and the climate change treaty would then likely remain just lofty words inscribed on a weighty parchment, evidence of the unfulfilled aspirations of a generation that could not rise above its disagreements and grievances. So if there's one thing that I hope you might take away from my remarks this evening, it is that implementing the post-2015 Sustainable Development Agenda requires a reformed and effective United Nations. But this requires putting into practice more fully the provisions of the UN Charter, the cornerstone of which is the recognition of sovereign equality of member states. It also requires a reinvigorated, accountable, and high-performing staff, for only an overhauled bureaucracy can restore the confidence in the organization's integrity, impartiality, and ability to deliver results to all. And finally, it requires hands-on, energetic leadership, informed by a bold and courageous vision, truly beholden to the advancement of the common good. In the words of Martin Luther King, striving to rise above the narrow horizons of particular individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of all humanity. I thank you for your attention.